Aaron Hargrove was 26 years old, heir to a billion-dollar empire, and he had less than 9 days to live. The oxygen levels kept dropping. The temperature kept spiking. And the best doctors in the country just kept saying, "We're managing it." Michael Hargrove was out of time. Out of options. Then the night shift janitor walked up to Michael Hargrove at 2 a.m. and said 6 words that changed everything. He did something strange that the medical world doesn't believe in. There are moments in life when all the money in the world sits useless in a bank account. When private jets cannot outrun time. When the most expensive doctors in the country stand in a hallway, hands in their pockets, eyes low, unable to say what anyone wants to hear. This is one of those moments. Michael Hargrove started with nothing. He spent 32 years getting up early, working long days, and making tough deals most people would have walked away from. Over time, he built 3 companies, put together 2 real estate portfolios, and earned a reputation that made people pay attention when he walked into a room. But none of that mattered now. Because his son, Aaron Hargrove, 26 years old, sharp-eyed, destined to carry everything his father had built, was dying in a private hospital suite on the 14th floor. And nobody knew why. The hallway smelled like cleaner and expensive flowers nobody had asked for. Michael stood at the window, his tie loosened for the first time anyone could remember. He kept his hands behind his back, squeezing them so hard his knuckles went white. Behind him, Dr. Carter Webb, the lead physician, the man whose name appeared in 3 medical journals and whose consultation fee cost more than most people earned in a month, cleared his throat. "Mr. Hargrove." Michael didn't turn. "We've run every available panel," Dr. Carter said carefully. "We've consulted with specialists in neurology, immunology, and internal medicine. The deterioration is real. It is progressing. And at the current rate." 9 days, Michael said flatly. Dr. Carter paused. "That is the estimate, yes. Possibly less." Michael finally turned. His eyes were dry, but they were the kind of dry that comes after everything wet has already been used up. "You're telling me," Michael said slowly, "that you, with all of this," he gestured around the suite, at the machines, the monitors, the pristine walls, "you cannot tell me what is happening to my son." Dr. Carter sat up and said, "We have some ideas. It could be the immune system attacking the body. It could be exposure to something toxic. Maybe. Theories." Michael's voice didn't rise. It dropped. "I'm not paying for theories." Dr. Carter said nothing. Michael turned back to the window. Below, the city moved like it always did. Cars kept making noise with their horns. People crossed the street. A man selling hot dogs fixed his umbrella. Down below, life went on like normal. No one knew the son of the Hargrove company was slowly dying. "Get out," Michael said quietly. Dr. Carter left without another word. Dominic Hargrove arrived that afternoon. Aaron's uncle. Michael's younger brother. He wore a grey suit that cost a reasonable fortune and carried himself like a man who had been waiting for a specific phone call for a long time. He entered the family waiting room, where Michael sat alone with a cold cup of coffee, and set his briefcase down with a careful click. "Michael." His voice was smooth. "Practiced. How are you holding up?" Michael looked at him. "You drove for hours." Dominic smiled. "You're my brother. Aaron is my nephew." Michael studied him the way he studied contracts. "The board meeting is in 11 days. Dominic's smile held. "I'm not here about the board." "You're always here about the board." A silence stretched between them like a rope pulled tight. Dominic sat down slowly. "The company needs leadership clarity. If Aaron," he paused, "if Aaron's condition continues, there are decisions that need to be made. Succession planning is responsible management, not get out of this hospital." Michael's voice was quiet and absolute. Dominic blinked. "Michael." "I said what I said." Dominic stood slowly, adjusted his jacket, picked up his briefcase. At the door, he turned. I'm praying for Aaron. I mean that. He left. Michael stared at the door for a long time. His name was Blake Osei. He had been a janitor at Meridian Private Hospital for 11 years. He was the kind of man rooms forgot existed. He pushed his cart quietly. He mopped corners. He refilled paper towel dispensers. He said good morning to nurses who sometimes replied and sometimes didn't. He was 61 years old. He had a gap between his front teeth and calloused hands and a habit of humming old songs under his breath. Nobody asked Blake much of anything. Which is why it surprised the junior nurse, a young woman named Priya, when she found Blake standing very still outside the door to Aaron Hargrove's suite. Not cleaning. Just standing. His mop resting against the wall. His eyes on the floor. Blake. Priya said. You okay? Blake looked up. His eyes were thoughtful. The young man in there, he said quietly. The rich man's son. Priya hesitated. Yes. Blake rubbed the back of his neck. How long has he been like that? Breathing heavy. Body going heavy like stone. Mind drifting. Priya frowned. How do you know about his symptoms? Blake shrugged. I pass this room 6 times a day with my cart. I hear people talking. He paused. My grandfather used to fish near Cape Cod. He had a boat called Patience. Blake said the word like it meant something. He saw that same sickness once. Called it the grey pull. Like something is slowly pulling a man underwater and he can't fight it. Priya crossed her arms. Blake, the doctors have. I know what doctors have done, Blake said simply, with no disrespect in his voice. I also know what my grandfather knew. He picked up his mop. I'm not saying anything. I'm just standing here. He pushed his cart down the hallway. Priya watched him go. Aaron got worse. The monitor showed what everyone was already thinking but didn't want to say. His oxygen level was dropping. His temperature kept going up and down. His eyes, when they opened, didn't always focus. Michael hadn't left the hospital. He'd slept in the family suite 2 rooms down, shoes on, jacket folded neatly on the chair beside him like he might need to move at any second. A second specialist flew in from Boston. A third consulted via video from London. A fourth was on a plane from Switzerland. They all said variations of the same thing. We are not sure. We are managing. We are hoping. Michael walked the corridor at 2 a.m. because sleep was no longer something that visited him. That was when he saw Blake. The janitor was mopping the corridor slowly, quietly, the way he always did. The hospital didn't stop needing to be cleaned just because it was 2 in the morning. Blake looked up. He nodded respectfully. Mr. Hargrove. Michael paused. Most men in his position walked past janitors without seeing them. But Michael Hargrove had grown up without money. He remembered what it felt like to be invisible. Blake, Michael said, reading the name tag. Yes, sir. Michael studied him. You work nights too? Tonight I do. Covering a colleague. Michael nodded and kept walking. Then he stopped. He turned around. Do you know something? Blake looked up slowly. His expression was careful. Not nervous. Just careful. People keep their opinions to themselves around here, Blake said. I'm asking for yours. Blake was quiet for a long moment. He leaned on his mop handle. My grandfather was a fisherman. Old man. 93 when he died. He spent 70 years on the water and he knew things that didn't come from textbooks. He paused. He told me once about a man from their fishing community who got sick the same way. Body shutting down slow like a machine losing power. They took him to every doctor. Nobody knew. Michael said nothing. He waited. My grandfather mixed something, Blake said carefully. A tea. From something he called sea lavender. Wild coastal plant. Combined with dried root bark from something the old Cape Cod fishermen called bitterhand root. He said it was passed down from generations of men who worked the water. Men who knew the body the way other people know weather. Blake shook his head slightly. I'm not a doctor. I'm not saying it works. I'm just saying the man lived. Michael stared at him. The symptoms you described to that nurse, Michael said. How did you know? Blake met his eyes steadily. Because your son sounds like that man. The hallway was silent except for the distant hum of machines. Can you get what you need? Michael asked. His voice was flat, practical. The voice of a man who had made decisions under pressure his entire life. Blake hesitated. It grows wild. There are coastal areas an hour from here. And I know a dry goods supplier in Gloucester who. Make a list, Michael said. Give it to my assistant in the morning. Blake blinked. Mr. Hargrove, I want to be clear. I'm a janitor. I'm not. I heard what you said. Michael's eyes were direct. Make the list. Dr. Carter found out by accident. One of the junior nurses mentioned it. By the time it reached him, the story had already grown legs. The janitor. The fisherman remedy. The CEO who was losing his son was apparently willing to listen to anyone now. Dr. Carter walked directly to Michael's temporary office in the hospital's administrative wing. He didn't knock hard enough before entering. Mr. Hargrove. His voice carried controlled tension. I've heard something concerning. Michael looked up from his phone. Have a seat, Dr. Carter. I'll stand. Is it true you're considering allowing an unqualified staff member to administer some kind of, he searched for the word, folk remedy to your son? Michael set his phone down. Blake Osei has been working in this hospital for 11 years. As a janitor. Dr. Carter's voice was stiff. And in those 11 years, Michael said calmly, has anyone ever asked him what he knows? Dr. Carter opened his mouth. Sit down, Michael said. Not loudly. Just clearly. Dr. Carter Saturday. You have given me 9 days, Michael said. Possibly less. You have 4 of the best paid specialists in the Western world consulting on my son's case, and the answer you keep bringing me is we're managing. He leaned forward. I am not interested in managing. I am interested in my son living. Dr. Carter's jaw tightened. If something goes wrong with a treatment that isn't proven, then we're in the same place we are now, Michael said. Nowhere. Dr. Carter pushed his chair back and stood up. I can't support this. I didn't ask for your support, Michael said. I asked you to keep monitoring him. That's your job. Mine is to find every possible option. Dr. Carter walked out. Behind him, Michael exhaled slowly. Blake came back the next morning with a canvas bag. He drove out to the coastal preserve before sunrise. He walked through the low brush near the water, moving like someone who knew what to look for. Sea lavender. He knew it from the grey-green stems and the light smell. His grandfather used to say it smelled like the ocean growing on land. He bought the dried bitterhand root from a small herb shop in Gloucester. The owner knew him by name. Before his shift, he sat in the hospital break room and prepared it carefully. Slow and steady. Taking his time. Priya sat across from him, watching. You're not scared? She asked. Blake looked up. Scared of what? If it doesn't work. If something happens. Blake was quiet. He folded the cloth over the mixture. My grandfather once pulled a fisherman out of the water who everyone said was already gone, he said. He didn't stop to think about what people would say if it didn't work. He just did what he knew. He looked at Priya. Fear is for after. Not during. Priya watched him. And if the doctors report you? They can report me, Blake said. Doesn't change what I know. Michael stood at Aaron's bedside. His son looked pale. Thin in a way that had happened fast, the way a candle loses height not from blowing but from burning. His breathing was shallow. The monitors beeped in their steady language. Aaron's eyes opened slightly. Just a crack. "Dad," he said. "Rough. Tired." Michael gripped his hand. "I'm here." Aaron's lips moved. "Am I going to die?" Michael didn't answer immediately. He never lied to Aaron. It was the one rule he'd kept since Aaron was a boy. "Not today," Michael said finally. Aaron made a small sound. Almost like a laugh. "You sound sure." "I'm working on it." Aaron's eyes closed again. Michael stood and walked to the door. Blake was in the corridor, canvas bag in hand, waiting. The two men looked at each other. "You understand," Michael said quietly, "that if this goes wrong." "I understand, sir," Blake said simply. "Why are you doing this?" Blake thought about it. "Because that young man in there reminds me of my own son. 26 years old. Full of life." He paused. "My son didn't get the help he needed when he needed it. Different situation. Same feeling." He met Michael's eyes. "I don't like watching people disappear when they shouldn't have to." Michael was silent for a moment. Then he nodded. "Come in." Blake prepared the tea at the bedside. It was simple. Hot water, the dried root, the sea lavender pressed between his palms first the way his grandfather had shown him. A small amount. Careful drops, not a full cup. Dr. Carter's nurse stood in the corner, arms crossed, documenting everything silently on a tablet. Blake lifted the small cup. Aaron was barely conscious. Michael held his son's head slightly. Blake pressed the cup gently to Aaron's lips. "Small sips," Blake said quietly. "Don't rush it." 3 small sips. Then Blake set the cup down and stepped back. They waited. For 10 minutes, nothing. The monitors beeped. Aaron's breathing remained the same. Shallow. Steady but thin. Michael's hands were clasped in front of him. The nurse updated her tablet. Then, at 14 minutes, Aaron's right hand moved. It was small. Just a shift. Fingers spreading against the sheet like someone testing whether their hand still worked. Michael leaned forward. Aaron's brow creased a little, like someone trying to wake up from a deep sleep. At minute 19, the oxygen number on the monitor started to go up. 1 point. Then another Priya, who had been standing quietly near the door, put her hand over her mouth. Blake stood completely still, watching the monitor like a man who had placed a careful bet and was not yet breathing. At minute 23, Aaron's eyes opened. Both of them. Fully. He blinked at the ceiling. "It's bright," Aaron said. His voice was rough but clear. Michael made a sound that a man of his composure would never have made in a boardroom. Low and broken and completely human. He grabbed his son's hand. "Aaron." Aaron turned his head. "Dad." He blinked again. "Why do you look like that?" Michael laughed. It wasn't a composed laugh. It was the laugh of someone who had been holding an enormous weight and had just been allowed to set it down. Blake exhaled slowly. He looked down at the floor. His jaw moved, but he didn't say anything. He just nodded quietly to himself. The nurse's tablet dropped from her hands and hit the floor. She didn't pick it up. Dr. Carter came in 20 minutes later. He stood at Aaron's bedside. He checked the monitors. He checked Aaron's eyes. He took his pulse the old way, 2 fingers on the wrist, eyes on his watch. His face went through several things. Disbelief. Professional confusion. Something that looked almost like embarrassment. "His oxygen saturation has improved," Dr. Carter said carefully. "I know," Michael said. Dr. Carter paused. "The improvement is significant." I can't medically explain what. You don't have to explain it, Michael said. You just have to continue doing your job. Dr. Carter looked at Blake, who stood quietly near the window. There was a long pause. What was in it? Dr. Carter asked quietly. Not aggressively. Just quietly. Blake told him the names. Simple and direct. Dr. Carter wrote them down. He came back that evening. News traveled fast in wealthy circles. The Hargrove heir was improving. Nobody knew exactly how. Rumors moved faster than facts. Dominic walked into the family waiting room and found Michael sitting with 2 cups of coffee, both hot, both untouched. I heard Aaron is better, Dominic said. Michael nodded. Dominic Saturday. That's good. He paused. Michael, about the board meeting. The board meeting will proceed, Michael said. Aaron will be present. Dominic blinked. You're certain he'll be well enough? I'm certain. Michael's voice carried the kind of certainty that had closed 1,000 deals. Dominic studied him. I heard it was the janitor. His name is Blake Osei, Michael said. He's worked in this hospital for 11 years. Dominic's mouth tightened. That's remarkable. Michael said. Yes. It is. Dominic was quiet. Michael looked at his brother directly. Dominic. I know what you came to this hospital for the first time. I'm telling you clearly. Aaron is my heir. That doesn't change. Don't make me say this again. Dominic stood. He straightened his jacket. He left without another word. Michael watched the door. 3 days later, Aaron was sitting up. He was still pale and moved slowly, but his eyes were clear. His appetite was back, and he spent an hour on his laptop looking through the reports his assistant had sent. Later, Michael brought Blake in so they could meet him properly. Aaron looked at the older man. Blake stood at the door the way he always stood, not taking up more space than he needed. You're the one, Aaron said. Blake nodded. Your father did the choosing. I just offered what I knew. Aaron studied him. Where did you learn it? Blake sat down slowly when Aaron gestured to the chair. My grandfather, Joseph Osei, came over from Ghana in 1971. Settled in Gloucester, Massachusetts because someone told him there was fishing work. He ended up staying 40 years. Blake smiled faintly. He fished every morning. Came home smelling like salt water. And in the evenings, he'd teach me things. Blake's voice softened. He said healing knowledge was like fishing nets. If you kept them folded up in a box, they rotted. You had to use them, pass them down, keep them moving. Aaron listened. He died when I was 30, Blake said. And I kept his knowledge the way you keep something you're not sure what to do with. Too important to throw away. Too strange to share. He paused. I tried once. With my own son. He got sick young. I suggested it and the hospital said no. They had their protocol. Blake's hands rested on his knees, still. He got better eventually on his own. But I always wondered. The room was quiet. Aaron looked at his father. Then back at Blake. I want to pay for whatever you need. Education. Research. Anything. Blake shook his head immediately. I'm a janitor. You don't have to be, Aaron said. Blake thought about it. I appreciate that. He stood slowly. But I'll tell you what I would appreciate. If your family ever had influence with a medical board or a research institution. He met Aaron's eyes. Someone should write down what my grandfather knew. Not to replace medicine. Alongside it. So the next time a young man is lying in a room and the doctors are out of answers, there's somewhere to look. Aaron nodded slowly. We can do that. Blake nodded once and walked back to the corridor, where his cart was waiting. The hospital board was less comfortable than Aaron. Word had spread. A janitor had given a patient something that wasn't approved. The patient was important. It didn't matter that he seemed better. It didn't matter that the family was okay with it. The legal risk was huge. One of the board members, a serious man named Evan Caldwell, called an emergency meeting. Michael was asked to come in and explain what happened. He came alone. He sat at the head of the conference table and let the board members speak first. He sat there and listened while they went on about liability, procedures, and regulations for 11 minutes. Then he spoke, quiet but steady. My son was dying. You knew it. Your doctors told me 9 days. Maybe less. And in 11 days, he'll be sitting in a board meeting at my company, going over the quarterly numbers. Silence. You want to hold a review meeting about the man who achieved what your most expensive specialists could not, Michael continued. I understand that. Institutions need process. He paused. But I will tell you clearly. If any disciplinary action is taken against Blake Osei, I will pull the Hargrove Foundation's funding from this hospital. All of it. That's not a threat. That's a business decision based on values. Evan Caldwell leaned forward. Mr. Hargrove. Additionally, Michael said, I will be making a substantial donation to a research initiative studying traditional and integrative medicine in partnership with Meridian's medical board. Blake Osei will be credited as a contributing knowledge source. He straightened. Which means this hospital is either the institution that held back knowledge that saved a man's life, or the institution that helped record it for future use. He stood. I'll let you decide which story you'd prefer. He left the room. The board sat in silence for a long moment. Evan Caldwell looked at the papers in front of him. Then he put them in the folder and closed it. Note, in this story, the Dorcas equivalent character is Dominic, already addressed above, adding the parallel quietly selfish internal character through a scene with Dominic's final moment of self-reckoning. 3 weeks after Aaron came home, Dominic called Michael. Not about the board. Not about succession. He just called. I owe you an apology, Dominic said. His voice was different. Smaller. Michael waited. When I came to the hospital, Dominic said, I told myself I came for you. That was a lie. He paused. I came because I'd been waiting for a door to open. That's shameful. Michael said nothing. I'm not asking to be forgiven, Dominic said. I just needed to say it. Michael looked out the window of his home office. I know you, Dominic. I've known you our whole lives. The fear of being irrelevant. I understand it. He paused. But you have your own children. Build your own thing. A long silence. Yeah, Dominic said quietly. I know. The call ended. Michael sat for a moment. Then he went downstairs, where Aaron was at the kitchen table eating toast and reading news on his tablet like he'd never been anywhere near a hospital. How are you feeling? Michael asked. Aaron looked up. Good. He paused. Actually good. Not performing good. Michael sat across from him and picked up his own coffee. They sat together quietly. 6 weeks later, Aaron stood at a small event hosted by the Hargrove Foundation. It wasn't a gala. It wasn't a press conference. It was a reception room with 60 people. Doctors. Nurses. A few researchers. Hospital staff. Blake Osei sat in the front row, wearing a dark blue jacket that was a little big in the shoulders. His daughter sat beside him. She was 28, and she kept looking at her father the way people look at someone they thought they knew and are suddenly seeing in a new light. Aaron spoke briefly. My father built everything he has by listening to people most people dismiss, he said. I almost died because the right person wasn't asked the right question. He looked at Blake. Blake Osei knew something. And he said it quietly to a nurse in a corridor because that was all the space he'd ever been given. Aaron paused. "We're here today to change that." He announced the Blake Osei Integrative Knowledge Initiative, a research program set up with Meridian Hospital to record and study traditional remedies. The plan was to learn from people in the community, fishermen, herbalists, grandmothers, anyone who knew things that had never been written down. Blake's daughter grabbed his hand. Blake stared at the floor for a moment. Then he looked up. His eyes were wet. He nodded once, like a man who has been carrying something a long time and has finally found somewhere to set it down with care. There is a kind of wisdom that never goes to school. It lives in the hands of men who rise before sunrise to push mops through quiet corridors. It lives in the memory of grandfathers who read water and wind and human bodies the same way. It lives in the patience of people who carry knowledge no one ever asked them to share. Blake Osei never asked to be a hero. He didn't walk into that hospital corridor with a speech prepared. He walked in with a mop and a memory and the quiet courage to say something when the moment asked him to. Michael Hargrove had everything money could buy. And the one thing that saved his family cost nothing but the willingness to listen. Aaron lived. Not because of the machines, though the machines helped. Not because of the specialists, though they cared and they tried. Aaron lived because one man, invisible to everyone, decided that invisibility was not the same as silence. And sometimes the people the world walks past are carrying exactly what the world needs. Blake's grandfather used to say, "The ocean doesn't care what you're worth. It only asks what you know." He was right. If this story moved you, share it with someone who might need to hear it today. Subscribe to the channel for more stories that remind us who the real heroes are. And comment below, where are you watching from? Tell us your city. We'll see you in the next story.